The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
You're listening to The Secrets of Movies and TV Shows. Hi, I'm Andrew Hermiz, and you're listening to The Secrets of Marvel's What If, where we will discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings of this Disney Plus streaming show. Joining me today is Mike Denz. Hi, Mike.
Hey, Andrew. Good to be here.
Awesome. It's just us two tonight. We'll be discussing this animated series from Marvel Studios. And just to let you know, before we kick things off, to follow Secrets of Movies and TV Shows on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or YouTube. And if you are going to follow on YouTube, hit that bell to get the notifications. So yeah, What If? It's a animated series that premiered on the Disney Plus streaming service, and it's based on the Marvel comic series of the same name. It's the fourth television series in the MCU, produced by Marvel Studios, and it's the first animated series. So the series explores alternate timelines and the multiverse that show what would happen if major moments from the MCU films occurred differently. So you have Jeffrey Wright as the narrator and the star as the watcher. And alongside many MCU film actors reprising their roles at a voice acting capacity, obviously. And the first season just wrapped up on October 6th, and it's canon. It's part of Phase 4 of the MCU. And we have learned that a second season is expected to premiere as early as 2022. So right off the bat, Mike, what did you think of What If overall?
Well, it's funny because even though the episodes all had the theme of things changing, it wasn't like they were all one show, like, the WandaVision or the Winter Soldier. They were, didn't have a common theme necessarily, except for this Watcher. He had that kind of almost 1950s narration in the beginning that he's the Watcher, and but he really didn't have a big role until the later episodes, except for just saying he's watching and then kind of giving it his thoughts at the end. So it's kind of up and down. The first episode, I'm a big fan of Agent Carter, so I kind of enjoyed seeing what she would be like if she was Captain America. Was left saying I'd rather have Steve Rogers be Captain America, but still it was, interesting. She was Captain Carter because she was British, Captain America. But if she got the serum and she ended up getting those powers. But basically, I know we're going to go through each episode a little bit later, so I won't do that right now. So I just say overall, it's up and down, but definitely on the positive side. Definitely like an overall B+, A- kind of place where some of them were nice A+ and a few of them were like C+.
Yeah, I have to agree basically with most of what you said. I felt like since it's an anthology series, where, like you mentioned, it didn't really have a continuous narrative until the end, where they kind of tied it up and created a bigger story that included a lot of the characters from some of the episodes. That we'll get into that, but it was a mixed bag, and like any anthology series, like the Twilight Zone or well, I don't know. I can't think of another one off the top of my head. There are many of them, but there's always going to be episodes that you like more than others, naturally. And I think with this one, they took a big, well, I don't know if it's a big risk. I mean, anything Marvel puts out, I think is pretty foolproof because they're running off of a record of all these films and shows that have done monumentally well. I mean, historically well. So I think they're able to get into to get into IP that's lesser known. I mean, like I mentioned from the top, the What If series was a comic book series. There were sort of one-off comics that would present a scenario, a what if scenario, and I think Marvel Studios, I think it was smart to do it as a animated series. I think it only works as an animated series. I think it would be hard to bring back a lot of these actors. I mean, it was absolutely. I mean, they couldn't even get all of them back as voice actors. I was actually impressed that they were able to get as many as they did back to reprise their roles. But I think this is a cool sort of section and medium that Marvel Studios is getting into, this animated world, because it's a chance for them to introduce stories like this that they would never get the green light for live action, but they'll be able to tell these stories, and they can and if there's a popular episode or one they think that might work, maybe they'll slip those characters into the cinematic universe. So I think as a concept and as a whole sort of introduction into the animated universe, so to speak, of the MCU, I think overall it was a positive for me, and it worked pretty well. Just certain singular episodes were sort of weaker than others, and there were some that really stood out. And we'll get into that.
Yeah, I think that you can obviously see that the production, the animation, consistent throughout. They didn't switch anything up there. They had the same people. I didn't look to see if they had the same directors. I'm assuming they wouldn't. That they would want a different director, the different episodes, as well as the story writers. So you did definitely have a different vibe or feel with what they were doing and where they were going. Some episodes were very dark. Some were very rather humorous and silly. And so you can kind of see that. And it's also interesting when you flip it with Disney's other huge, well-known acquired universe of Star Wars, where Star Wars has long had rather successful and well-liked animated series, and the Disney produced live series outside of Mandalorian have been a mixed bag as far as the reception from the fans. But the animated series are pretty much universally liked by the target audiences, whether they be younger or older audiences. And this is the first time now they're like, well, let's try this with, all the things we can do in Marvel with animated series. It was a good way to do it because they got to really explore a lot of different storylines.
Well, I just looked it up, and it was directed by the same person.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, Brian Andrews. Yeah, Brian Andrews.
He is the one who directed all of them. Okay, I knew he was kind of in charge, but I wasn't sure if he directed every episode.
He directed every episode, and obviously he worked on Clone Wars and Samurai Jack, and he's worked on let's see, Avengers. He worked on Avengers Endgame at some capacity, it looks like, and Doctor Strange. But yeah, so he directed every episode, and every episode was written by AC Bradley. She wrote for Troll Hunters.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's,
Well, I just got blown out of the water. I really thought they were that's a lot of range there. I'm thinking this had to be different people.
Matthew Chauncey, but Matthew Chauncey was another writer. Okay. So every episode basically was either written by AC Bradley or Matthew Chauncey. And it looks like a couple episodes they worked in tandem. Okay. So basically, two consistent writers and a consistent director. But yeah, I agree. They did a good job of, mixing up the animation and, with all the different stories, like giving each one their own sort of like aesthetic, so to speak. And some, again, work better than others. But I feel like overall, it looks like they were able to sort of be creative and take some chances.
Yeah. And just like try things, basically.
Yeah, and again with all this multiverse stuff happening in the in the Marvel universe, there's really no right or wrong you could do. It's you can throw anything against the wall and see what sticks. And
Yeah, it's interesting. It's I mean, we could do a whole episode on multiverses or alternate realities and everything. You know, Star Trek has gone down. Oh, we're going to reboot. You know, and the X-Men series has done different ideas with we go back in time and change stuff, or we have alternate realities. And you know, there are Star Wars fans thinking, oh, maybe they'll have they'll try to reboot some of the prequels or the sequels, you know, and change those up. Who knows? But it gives you this carte blanche. We can do whatever we want because we have a multiverse, and we can just say whatever happens. You know, basically every possibility is supposed to be out there. So there's sky's the limit.
Exactly. Yeah, and it also gives you flexibility to retcon stuff that maybe didn't work before. And I think we might see some of that, maybe more so in the DC universe with Flashpoint. But you know, we'll get there when that comes.
Right.
Yeah, so we're not going to get into each and every episode, but I just wanted to highlight maybe what were some of your favorite episodes that stood out to you.
Well, I think, and just from talking to you before, we both kind of really liked the last couple of episodes. I won't go there. We can talk about those. But I did mention, you know, I'm a fan of Captain Carter. Agent Carter, who was Captain Carter. So I kind of liked that one. But it's some of the other ones, you know. I'm looking through them right now and thinking about them, you know, and which ones that I really liked the most. I think the Doctor Strange one would probably be, and the one with T'Challa, the Black Panther. Black Panther and he became Star-Lord. So basically he was the one that they accidentally. I always tease my daughter because I can't remember his name, like Xanadu or whatever his name was.
Yondu.
Yondu.
Yondu. Close enough.
Yeah, right. Yeah, not even. But anyway, came and got T'Challa by mistake instead of the real Star-Lord, and how he has such a well raised, virtuous man that he, you know, like tamed even Thanos and everything, and the whole universe was kind of,
that was great. Yeah,
it was almost like this conflict free kind of, there really wasn't, you know, a lot wrong going on for him because of how things, you know, were created so well, and it just like, it was really one of the only ones where we actually fixed things, I suppose you could say, instead of caused problems with the changes. The other one that, like I mentioned, is the one with Doctor Strange, and the idea that he loses his heart instead of his hands, and his heart being his love interest. She dies, and he does an interesting thing. It's been done before as far as like time loops and Star Trek and stuff, where he just keeps going back over and over and over and trying to correct it. And in this idea, he faces there's just some things you can't change. No matter what you do, you're going to get the same result every time, which is basically her death. Until he, you know, warps that reality to such an extent that it's, you know, no longer even recognizable. But it was just a really cool idea. It was really done. You did have the original voice of Cumberbatch, you know, was the voice, and I you know, and that's an iconic voice. That's one of those voices of God kind of voices that he has. So it's kind of nice that he did it instead of someone else trying to do it. So I'd say those two were, you know, stood out for me.
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. I definitely and it's a popular answer. I think, you know, the Doctor Strange episode, I think, is probably the most widely critically acclaimed episode out of the series. And again, yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with, like you mentioned, Benedict Cumberbatch's performance, and you know, the story being so emotional, and then seeing Strange Supreme, like seeing that evolution to Strange Supreme was, everything from the animation to the score to the writing. I think this was the episode where all phases of the production like came together so beautifully, and was a really poignant episode. Where some episodes just felt like, we had fun with that, and it's forgettable. This one had real ramifications, where the ancient one had to split Strange into two different, Stranges using, the dark magic, and seeing at the end how, the Strange Supreme had to, at the end grieve alone, and it was really a fascinating episode, and again the T'Challa episode was great too, because again, Chadwick Boseman, I mean, getting his final performance before, that were
I was glad that there was. I didn't realize he would be voicing all of the times that T'Challa was in, and he was in more than just that episode. And to have that just as a, we have his voice, we have him performing, his character T'Challa one more time. It's just great, that it wasn't just the movies that we had more.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was nice getting to revisit him, and he knocked it out of the park, and it was awesome. I mean, most of the voice cast was there. I mean, you had Josh Brolin playing Thanos, and the Thanos character was great in this one. Michael Rooker was Yondu, Benicio del Toro as the Collector, Kurt Russell even came in. I mean, there's at the end,
and they're iconic kind of voices. I mean, like all of them have voices, or you hear them talk, and you're like, oh yeah, that's Rooker. I mean, that raspy voice. That, and they're all the Del Toro. I mean, he's I suppose you can imitate him a little easier, but still, he was just so surreal in his performance. I loved it. So it's kind of nice to have him back. Yeah,
you can tell he had fun with that, because the this is a very different Collector than the one in the films.
Yeah.
So you can tell he was just chewing up the scenery.
And I liked Tom Hiddleston. I don't remember if Loki was in this episode, but he was in a few episodes, and that was nice to have him doing that too.
Absolutely. And we had Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger too. Later on. Yeah. So it was great. Again, it's great that they were able to get the cast that they did. I kind of agree. Those are probably my two favorites, other than like you mentioned briefly, the last two episodes. I think the series ended pretty strong.
Yeah.
Because they were able to, first of all, introduce a reality where Ultron won, which is just fascinating to think about. And obviously the last episode being, what if the Watcher broke his oath? So that having to, where Ultron wins, and we know that since from the movies that Ultron wanted to destroy humanity, because within 5 minutes of being online, he decided that humanity was not worthy of living anymore because of how, I guess, destructive we are. A
la Skynet, just like we're just going to kill the people. Yeah. The ultimate Terminator.
So, I mean, thank God, we have a Watcher who was able to see this, and you start to see as the series goes along, the Watcher has a conscience. I mean, he has feelings, he has emotions, and he couldn't stand to not do anything in this case. It was.
Yeah, I heard that the comics were not that way, that he was a little bit more of a standoffish. From what I read, I haven't seen the comics personally, but from what I read, and he really became a character in these two, because at the end of episode 8, when Ultron wins, Ultron discovers the multiverse and starts messing with things that the Watcher never saw. Like it was almost like, wait, you can do whatever you want in your universe, but now you're you're jumping around and messing with things, and this is not supposed to be this way. And that's when he starts to question, his oath. Like, can I do anything? And he gets called out by, wasn't it? One of the not Scarlet Witch, but
trying to remember.
He gets called out by we'll have to edit this out.
Black Widow,
right?
Yeah,
Black Widow calls him out, and it's like, you just stand there and you have this power to stop things. It's a classic kind of like,
she's like, did you eat popcorn? Did you make popcorn while
So it's a classic kind of like, if God was just this distant God who just watched everything, and how cruel it would be for him to not help, and those questions people have with their faith, they threw that at him. And then, obviously we know what happens in the last episode, because it's the title, The Watcher. What if the Watcher broke his oath? So his oath of just being an observer is broken, and he gathers this kind of like, what if Avengers ensemble, like we get this, and and they all get called, like in this kind of like, well, I'm just taking you with me, and he goes and he grabs them all out of wherever they are. And it's kind of like the Magnificent Seven, going around and get these different people that are going to be perfect. And it's really neat because of how, and spoiler alert, how Killmonger is chosen, because we need somebody to do the bad thing for it all to work out. And so he had to have him there. He had his role, which was really just to, he thought he was messing it up, but it was a necessary evil, almost the Judas of the whole thing, in order to make it all work.
Yeah. And going back to the Ultron episode, it's amazing. Like, you really get to see like how just changing one thing, has such a huge effect. I mean, it destroyed the universe. I mean, you have a scene where Thanos appears with, 4 of the stones, and Vision's like, oh, that's interesting, and just splits them in half.
Yeah, that was just like, whoa, how did he do that? Wait a minute. And, that was kind of easy.
Man, I know, right? It's like, man, what if, it made me think of like Infinity War. Is like, man, if Scarlet Witch, wasn't trying to rip the Soul Stone out of Vision, and Vision was able to just face Thanos head to head, that might have been the outcome.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what stone did Ultron? Didn't Ultron have more than just the? Which stone was it?
It wasn't. I said the Soul Stone. It was the Mind Stone.
Yeah, the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
And the Mind Stone.
Yeah.
Is that what he had when he split him in half, or did he have more stones than that? Ultron.
I want to say it was just the Mind Stone.
Okay.
Maybe I have to. Don't quote me on that. Maybe I have to rewatch that episode.
Yeah,
again.
I don't remember exactly, because it's clear for instance, with Thanos, that the Scarlet Witch and Captain Marvel can handle him to a certain extent, except when he uses the Power Stone, and then he can overcome them. So I'm curious to see if to go back and look to see if did Ultron have the Power Stone or not?
Yeah, from what I remember, he definitely only used the Mind Stone to split him in half, because it was just like a beam.
Okay.
So and I want to say that Thanos appeared with 4 of the stones on the gauntlet. But revisit that.
Yeah, that's it.
Listeners,
I was watching with my Marvel expert daughter at the time, and she explained it, and I don't remember what she said. So sorry about that. I should have.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that coming up, because it wasn't until you said it. I'm like, oh yeah, he split Thanos in half. That was just like, wow, you just took that entire movie and like reduced it to a few seconds.
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's amazing how much fun they had. Like, you could tell these writers were like, we were talking right before this, like they kind of had like this ongoing thing of killing Tony Stark over and over again, becoming the Kenny of the MCU. And you had another example of, like you mentioned when we're talking about the T'Challa episode, where just with his words, Black Panther convinced Thanos not to use the stones, and Thanos was just one of the guys. Really,
all of them, everybody, all these powerful characters were all just kind of, like it was the gang of Cheers or something. We were all just kind of hanging out, and and we're friends, and we're subdued by T'Challa as Star-Lord. So Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, and just to wrap up the final episode, yeah, I thought it was really. You brought up a good point where it's the Watcher, this character who is infamous for just being the Watcher, where he does not involve himself in any conflict. His job is just to be to retain all the stories of all the universes, and he's just on the sidelines.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what his role is because he can't interfere, so he's just kind of looking. And I don't know, like, when does he when does he have a, what I mean? Like, if he can't do anything,
really, in the comics, like he really just watches. I mean, there are. I mean, I'm sure there are comics where he's intervened before. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but usually he's a character that appears for like a page here or there, where he's just sort of telling, giving information, doing sort of an exposition dump, because he has all the knowledge and knows all the stories, right? So he's basically there for exposition. But in this one, it's like I'm glad they kind of introduced the idea of like, well, even if this was your responsibility, if you were a being with a conscience, with any sort of free will, could you watch all these atrocities happen in all these different universes? At some point, you're gonna have to break, right? You're either gonna become numb and your conscience is broken, or it's your conscience is gonna eat at you, and at some point you're gonna have to use common sense instead of being loyal to some sort of arbitrary oath that you had to make. It's right. A cool way to and obviously, like, I kind of knew they were like having Jeffrey Wright narrate it. Like, I had a feeling that the Watcher was going to be more than just a narrator, because he's a pretty he's a pretty big get. I mean, and we're seeing him become like a bigger and bigger star. Like, he's playing Jim Gordon in the new Batman, and obviously he was in the Westworld series. If for anyone who was a fan of that show, but it's cool to see that character gets to create the Guardians of the Multiverse. It's funny that he chose the characters that he did. Like, if you could pull any character from any universe, like, yeah, you have to choose these guys, right? You got the Party Thor and the you have like the Black Panther Killmonger and all that. Like, it's an interesting team.
Yeah, those two guys received their pose, and you had the two women were really the kind of like the strong organizational with Black Widow and Captain Carter. Kind of like the strong characters of the whole thing, and really the linchpins. I mean, they were, even though she has her Captain America powers, but certainly when you have Black Widow is just a human being who's really talented. And they were the big saviors of the whole thing. It was kind of funny to see T'Challa Star-Lord. He's basically just jumping around and shooting his guns. I mean, it's kind of like, you're a guy with talented guns. You're kind of like Hawkeye with guns. I don't know. Like, what are you really doing? Especially against what you're facing. This isn't somebody who hasn't faced a ray gun before. And Thor, had his role. But it was just funny how you had we're going to see the conflicts when we throw all these people together. But ultimately, through the common goal of getting everything back to what it should be and defeating evil, except for the killer. I forgot his. The
Killmonger. Yeah,
Killmonger. I had to ask my daughter who that was too. So, who was Killmonger? Oh, okay, yes. I wasn't really used to him being called Killmonger.
Right. Yeah.
But anyway, I'm like, why is he here? He's just going to mess everything up. And then seeing how, thinking, he is messing everything up, but it was necessary. But I just liked how they kind of like, we're going to do kind of an Avengers episode with a different group of Avengers, and how that worked.
Yeah,
out. And calling them the Guardians of the Multiverse, right? It was kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxies, because they kind of had that ragtag kind of thrown together group of people. that we associated them with the Guardians.
Absolutely, yeah. No, that was fun, and I thought it was a great way to like wrap up the first season, giving it somewhat of an arc, and it'll be interesting to see now. The Watcher has broken his oath, and whenever we do get a season 2, that is the plan. I feel they are developing season 2. It'll be interesting to see how they deal with his character moving forward, whether he goes back to the sidelines or if he stays involved.
Right. And how can they call him the Watcher?
Yeah, we're gonna have to change his name. Yeah, and will he have to face any consequences? I mean, for breaking the oath.
Right. Yeah. Who's higher than him? That holds him to this oath. I was thinking too of the episodes that I didn't like, and I don't want to spend a ton of time on each one.
Sure.
We
Yeah.
talked about the ones we did like, but there was just a hand, and I'm not saying I didn't like them. I just had some problems with them a little bit. The one was the zombie episode, where there was a pandemic of zombies that was easily spread, basically because once you infected the Wasp and them, they were just so small, they just infected everybody. But basically, the Avengers got affected, and then they just were unstoppable as zombies. And that was interesting. I didn't like the way people were getting killed off, but I got it. Like, you don't want to see heroes and characters you like die, but that's part of the story watching that happens, obviously. So you accept that, okay, this is a zombie episode. I get that. But the fact that there wasn't really an ending, they just kind of like, okay, here we are. What are we going to do next? They got down to Scarlet Witch and Captain Carter, I believe. And we just don't know what happened. What are we going to do? So I didn't, I think when you and I were talking earlier, we both agreed that would have been more of a series that would have been good than trying to put it as an episode.
Yeah, because the comic book, it's a fun comic book series. I mean, there's a comic book series called Marvel Zombies, and yeah, I think as a standalone episode, it didn't really do it enough justice. I mean, there were some cool scenes. I mean, it was really gory. I mean, they really went for it on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. If they're going to do zombies, they're going to do it right. I mean, that's what people who like zombies want the gore and the. I mean, it wasn't like they saw like a lot of brain eating or anything. But the zombies looked really horrific.
Yeah, for a Marvel property, it was kind of more than you usually see in that department.
The Killmonger episode where he rescues Tony Stark. I guess like one of the things is like, how did they get that off the ground? Like when you first mention it, like, well, let's say we like instead of Tony Stark developing Iron Man, Killmonger rescues him, and my first reaction is. Yeah, so what? Like, okay, so why is that how we're going to have Iron Man not become Iron Man? Like, how it just seems like a strange kind of like out there. It doesn't sound that interesting. I'm not a big fan of Killmonger, so maybe that's a little bit of my bias. As a bad guy, he wasn't one of my favorite bad guys. So I guess even though I thought it was well done for the concept they have, the concept itself didn't really interest me as much as the other ideas. Like, oh yeah, I want to see how that works. And that also kind of goes along with the episode that these are all 3 episodes in a row. So I was really happy when we got to the Ultron episode.
That's good.
Because the third in a row was when Thor was a child, which is kind of like the slapstick goofy episode that they had where everything happening was kind of fun. Even the battle between Thor and Captain Marvel as epic as it was just 2 people who couldn't hurt each other going back and forth. But it was kind of goofy. And it's also like, what if Thor were only a child? It's kind of like, yeah, he kind of was. I mean, when you first meet him in the first Thor, he's not exactly Mr. Mature. I mean, when dad is not looking, he wants to go off and, mix it up with the Frost Giants, as like, some sort of vengeful teenager or something. And it wasn't really well thought out. And he just kind of went in there and did it. And got everybody in trouble. So, it's like, well, with Thor for only a child, it's kind of like, okay, like, let's make him even more mature than he already was. It would, it wasn't that big of a leap, and it wasn't that interesting. My favorite part really was the okay, let's watch Captain Marvel and Thor fight. These are
that was
most
cool.
powerful, heroes we have, and it was interesting because I'm thinking, okay, who's, Thor is always kind of up there as the guy that can kind of handle everybody to a certain extent. But Captain Marvel, she's like, riding through spaceships and just, so she should be able to handle him. And then she says, well, if I took him out, I would take out half the earth too. So I'm trying to hold back and, use as little of power as I can to stop him. So that was an interesting kind of reveal. Like, she kind of tells you this is what'll happen if I actually, use all the power I can to destroy him.
Yeah, I think with that episode, I agree. It was kind of the more forgettable episodes for me. I think it was an interesting way to present Thor as if, what if like he didn't grow up with Loki? I guess that's how he would turn out. I feel like they probably could have done something more interesting with that. But it was
well, even Loki showed up and he was a goofball,
right? Yeah. This was like Ferris Bueller's Day Off. This was like Thor's Day Off, right? It was an excuse to do like a comedic episode, and I can appreciate that. But yeah, it was compared to the stronger episodes that we just talked about. It didn't really stand out that much. And the Killmonger episode, I agree. It was okay. Killmonger is actually one of my favorite villains. But
okay, well, we differ on that.
Yeah, but I do agree that it was sort of an interesting way, again, like to include him as the guy who saves Tony, and it just felt like they just needed to introduce Killmonger in some way for the ending, and this was their way of doing it.
Yeah, that's true. They did want him in there, and he's obviously is a popular villain.
Yes,
absolutely. The fact that they brought him in there and they wanted to have him have his own kind of episode and then be part of the final two episodes, or at least the final episode.
Yeah,
wasn't in the second.
And everyone wants him back for Black Panther 2, Wakanda Forever, and there's no official announcement of him reprising his role in that film, but there are rumors that he will be in that movie at some capacity, but nothing official. So I think. And
you said that actor did reprise his role, or no?
He did in Michael B. Jordan. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did voice it.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. My least favorite episode was probably the first one. It was probably the Captain Carter one. I know you like that one because you like the character. I like the character too, but I felt like being the first episode, being the first one out the gate to present this sort of series and story and these stories, I felt like it didn't have any earth-shattering, universe-shattering, I guess you should say, ramifications. Captain Carter was basically as good as Captain America and kind of accomplished all the same things. Had to fight Hydra and all that sort of stuff. So I guess for a first episode and kind of like a narrative standpoint, I don't think it was as creative as some of the other episodes were. So for me, I think that was the most forgettable one, and the one I was like, okay, that was kind of interesting, I guess. But I think her character definitely shine more in the last episodes.
Yeah. I think you can kind of see what they were doing when you look at the way they lined up. They didn't want to go too dark too fast. Sure. So, they give us, the bland, but, interesting, as you say, not that much different. But it's just basically, it's almost like, what if Captain America were a woman is basically it, same thing, but it's just a woman, and a British woman instead of an American man. But then you get the T'Challa, which is kind of a feel-good kind of thing before we go dark. And it gets progressively darker. First, the mightiest heroes fall. And then you have the watching Doctor Strange just deteriorate throughout the movie, and then in Zombies you're seeing the violent destruction of your heroes as zombies, which is a lot worse than when they were taken out by Pin. And then the T'Challa episode was also had a really dark turn.
Oh yeah.
So you had these three dark ones, and then you had kind of the comedy relief, the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern of the whole series. Where, well, let's just, before we get into Ultron winning, which is pretty dark, let's just have a comedy relief episode, and then we're going to go back. So I think that they were mapped out on purpose that way, so that people weren't like, if they started with those dark ones, it might have turned people off. Like, oh my gosh, what are they really? So we're going to go light first and draw you in a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I didn't really think of it that way, but yeah, I'm sure that had to go into consideration how they were going to order these things.
Yeah, because there's nothing else. I mean, I'm not saying I'm right, but there's no chronological. There's none of them follow another one except for the last two.
Exactly.
So there's really no reason to put them in any sort of order. The last two have to be there because the characters were already introduced and they did follow it. So it was a part 1, part 2 episode.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. So before we wrap up here, I just wanted to do something a little fun. Introduce some popular what if fan ideas, and maybe if Mike, if you had any you wanted to present, you can throw those out there. But what I'll throw out first is, what if Winter Soldier killed Tony Stark instead of his parents? Now, see that. So if Tony Stark died and you have Howard surviving, how do you envision Howard, possibly navigating those waters?
Yeah, it's interesting because I would be focused on Howard. His wife was not really ever a character that we really see. So, and where would he take Stark Industries? Would he have some sort of opportunity to dabble in the Iron Man technology that Tony discovered, and where would that go? And how bitter would he be about the loss of his son? And would there be a Winter Soldier, conflict? Would it result in another kind of civil war? Would you go there? But that's a lot.
Oh yeah. I mean, absolutely.
There's a lot of things you could explore there.
Yeah. The first thing I think of is I think of the Flashpoint Batman, if you're familiar with that story, where it's sort of the same idea. It's in the DC multiverse, there is a universe where Bruce Wayne gets killed instead of his parents, and Thomas Wayne, he becomes Batman eventually. So, but he's a much more brutal and vengeful Batman. I mean, I know the Batman we know is brutal and vengeful, but this is on another level. Like, watching your little boy die in front of you. You can just imagine.
And that's the difference. Yeah. It's a much different kind of vengeance when it's your own child, and the motivations and the possibility for darkness,
right,
and bitterness to overcome you. Not that it's not there for parents.
Sure.
But, I mean, everyone can relate. Most of us live long enough to lose our parents, and we kind of accept that as a part of life.
Right.
You never want to lose your child. It's just you're never supposed to bury your own child. So that's a whole different storyline there.
Yeah. And that Flashpoint, Thomas Wayne's wife, Bruce Wayne's mother, becomes the Joker in that storyline. So just imagine that.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine like maybe Howard, would become some version of Iron Man, maybe more like Ironmonger. And then maybe his wife, we know very little about her, but maybe she would become, a villainous character. I mean, again, being Howard Stark and having all that technology at your disposal and being such an innovator, you could easily imagine Howard Stark becoming an Iron Man sort of character, whether it's more on the villainous side, more in that gray area. You would think he would be either more in that gray area, because there's a lot of good in Howard Stark. We know a lot about that Howard Stark character.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, but he has just like his son, there's that that kind of arrogance,
Oh yeah,
and the corruption of the riches and kind of stuff that could go down a bad path. It never happens. Both of them are innately, good men, flawed good men. It's a classic Marvel hero, but you could see if pushed, hard enough. Just the very fact that you had a civil war with like really the best of the two fighting one another with Captain America and Iron Man. There was a little bit of darkness on both sides.
Oh sure,
that caused them to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that would be interesting storyline to explore. So another one I'll put out there is what if Quicksilver never died in Age of Ultron, and in Endgame, instead of Hawkeye and Black Widow going to get the Soul Stone, where Black Widow, as we know, sacrificed herself. What if it was Scarlet Witch and Pietro Quicksilver who had to go get the Soul Stone? So it would be another scenario where Scarlet Witch would possibly have to witness Quicksilver dying in front of her. So yeah, what do you think? Do you think Scarlet Witch would be the one to sacrifice herself? Would it be Quicksilver? What are your thoughts on that one? I'm such a fan of
the MCU. So understand when I say like the scene of Black Widow and Hawkeye arguing over who's going to sacrifice themselves for the Soul Stone was one of the best. It was just
incredible.
11 years or however many years when we first met the two of them, 8 or so of their friendship and the different things they went through. And the background of these characters, the darkness that they have. And then they're in that moment and they're like, I'm going to redeem myself. I'm going, and
right.
Back and forth. And as, a fan not knowing which one is going to, do it. And, but ultimately you're like, Scarlet Witch needed that, and not Scarlet Witch, excuse me, Black Widow. She was searching for meaning, and she found it in sacrifice. And Hawkeye had family. His family was coming back if this all worked out, so they would meet him. But now you have this other thing. You have Scarlet Witch, who you think, well, she's going to be able to do it if she wants. She's Scarlet Witch.
She's that powerful.
Do something to her brother. But Quicksilver's pretty fast.
Yes, exactly.
So if he wants to go down the cliff, she's going to have to be pretty quick. So that would have been a whole interesting kind of slow-mo, especially if they did in slow motion.
Oh yeah,
like they did the scene in the kitchen,
right.
With Quicksilver. It was like one of my favorites. If I could have time in the bottle, although they wouldn't want to play that music.
Yeah.
But having her trying to stop him and him trying to get over the cliff and her trying to stop him so she could do it first or whatever. That would have been quite and also the emotional aspect of it, because you would have had the buildup. You would have had their relationship continue to play out, throughout the movies, instead of him kind of being gone kind of early. I mean, he was introduced and he was gone. So I like that one. And when I was looking at that idea, I was thinking that you were saying Scarlet Witch died and it was Quicksilver. But then when we just read it, I'm like, oh, okay, no, he's added to the mix. And then you have the two of them going to get the Soul Stone.
Yeah, I
love that one. I really do.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, my mind goes immediately to like Quicksilver's speed. I feel like he would just do it before she could even think, right? Because we see in Age of Ultron, he saved her and saved that. I think he saved the little boy, right?
Yeah,
if I remember, I haven't seen that movie in a while, but he's the one.
I think he was shot because he went to save somebody, like basically.
Right. Yeah. And he's shown us that he's willing to make that sacrifice play, and I'm sure Scarlet Witch would too, for the greater good, obviously. But we see, obviously in WandaVision, her whole motivation is to bring her loved ones back. So if that were to play out that way, I think WandaVision would still be a thing. She would be emotionally crushed, seeing Quicksilver, die in front of her for the Soul Stone. And if everything else carried on the same way, with Vision dying as well at her hands, I think WandaVision still plays out,
yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. and I mean, it's interesting because she had all these losses throughout her life that kept on building and building. And
Oh yeah,
her brother was definitely one of them, but he wasn't part of
Sokovia,
part of
yeah,
WandaVision. Yeah, he wasn't part of that. Yeah, Sokovia gone. Yeah. But Vision was, the one constant that she wanted to bring back. So it would be interesting to see, if WandaVision would be different. But we're talking a whole, like, shows in themselves, some of these things that you're putting out there. One of the things that I was thinking of, which is kind of a simple thing, but what if the roles of Thor and Loki were reversed? And you could do reversals to any degree that you want, whether it's just that Loki was the favorite of
Odin,
and Thor was, not. Is Thor's personality such that he? I don't think you change their personalities. You just change their sense of right and wrong, and their sense of entitlement. Thor was more like, okay, if this is given to me, but he wasn't seeking after it so much. And so if he was more still the immature, punch before thinking kind of guy, but with a more devious bent, and you have kind of a slick, stylized, good moral compass Loki. So kind of the Loki that we ended up with at the end of this series, but more from the beginning. And so, but you could take it to the point where maybe you have Thor is a frost giant who's adopted, and Loki is the natural son, so that you have the reversal even more so. There's a lot of interesting things you could do, and just to see what would happen.
Yeah, I think we would just get Fat Thor if that was the case. Like, the Thor,
eventually.
Yeah, the Thor we basically see in Infinity War and Endgame, until he gets forgot the name of his new hammer, but.
Oh gosh, yes.
But anyway, we all know. I think we would just. I think Thor, like you mentioned, he never really wanted the throne. He didn't ever seek, to be king of Asgard. He just wanted to make his parents proud and, be a warrior. He loved fighting and he loved, he just loved being a part of the fight. I think if he were ever abandoned by his father or felt like he was the black sheep, I think you're either going to get Fat Thor or, Party Thor that we see in What If. I don't think you would get an evil Thor in that.
Yeah, it would be interesting. You have to see, because even Party Thor wasn't bad. He just was stupid.
Right.
Which was kind of always kind of like how you labeled Thor as just not all that bright. It's a comparative to Loki. But if you would have to have some sort of maniacal, like what do we look like as a selfish, is it like you're saying, I see what you mean. If he has these negative traits, these evil traits, he would end up just being lazy and fat, or, just doesn't care. And then get in the same kind of trouble maybe that he did get to. So maybe we did get a little taste of it.
Yeah.
And What If Thor were just a boy?
Yeah. Well, here's a fun one. So what if the Hulk, what if his powers worked the opposite way? What if every time he got mad, he would turn to Bruce Banner? So basically, if he's in a fight, he's got to keep a level head, or he's going to become weaker and weaker. So
yeah, that's like, you can't take all the blows personally,
Yeah, the sun's getting real low. He'd have to hear that a lot, maybe have that repeated to him constantly.
Yeah, and that would be like, Black Widow would be like, calming him down so he becomes the Hulk.
Yeah.
Instead of the opposite thing. I'd have to work out the mechanics of that, because it's almost like, this is weird. How does that even work? And he's sitting there and he's all upset, and it's like, this isn't working. I'm too upset.
Yeah.
It's almost like this Zen monk kind of, Hulk. And that of course takes away from his personality, because he's almost like he's what did we call the medium Hulk that
Professor Hulk?
Professor Hulk,
Yeah.
you know, that was kind of him. Like when they went back in time and he's like, oh, you know, he tried to be all mad and it just wasn't working for him.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I think you'd have, except, you know, if he got, that one never got mad, but if he did, he would have turned back into Bruce Banner.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. I think he would eventually end up in the same spot where he would find a happy medium between Bruce Banner and the Hulk. So I think he would still have to find that balance. But I think on the way there, he would have to do a lot of meditation. So, you know, maybe he would probably have to practice a lot of, you know, probably get into some sort of martial arts, you know, kind of be like Bruce Lee, just sort of like, you know, just very confident, knowing, you know, your enemy and knowing what moves you're going to do, instead of like just being the Hulk, knowing that you're basically indestructible, and just getting stronger and stronger the madder you get. You know, in this case, you know, you'd have to like just be smooth and calm, and it would be a very different Hulk. Hulk would not smash in this scenario.
Not out of anger. It would be more like, well, I guess I got to use my strength there.
Right.
You know, kind of control, almost like a Captain America kind of controlled, you know, kind of just, you know, doing it and using his skills, but it wouldn't be this kind of wild. He might even become more skilled because he has to be more of the in control.
Right. Yeah. And there would probably be a lot less collateral damage around him.
Yeah. More precise.
Exactly.
A precise Hulk is a scary thing.
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah, he probably would be able to beat Thanos in that sort of scenario. The last one I'll throw out there, which I think is really interesting and can go a number of different ways, is what if the other half got dusted when Thanos snaps his fingers? You know, what if, including Thanos himself, you know, the Thanos would have gotten dusted. You would basically, Iron Man would have gotten dusted, and you would have surviving members like Black Panther, and Scarlet Witch. So you would have basically the heroes left with the stones, because if Thanos is dusted, that leaves you with the question of, well, okay, who's going to wield the stones first of all? And you would imagine like they would do the same thing as the other heroes did, as the Hulk ultimately had to do, is snap his fingers and bring everyone back. Who would do it? And what would potential storylines or ramifications be of that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, we know that it obviously wasn't random. They wanted the original Avengers to survive, so the original Avengers would take care of everything.
Sure.
And so now you're having all the new people there. And I think in order for it to be a real story with you know, unless you're introducing something brand new, it is a little bit too easy. Like from my view, it's like, well, okay, one of us just has to get these, you know, grab all these stones or grab the gauntlet and, you know, undo it. And it might kill us depending on who it is. You know, or maybe Scarlet Witch does it and, you know, she's powerful enough to be able to handle it. So there has to be something where it's not that simple. You know, maybe when Thanos, you know, got dusted, the stones were dusted. You know, I don't know. You know, that's off the top of my head, but something else. There has to be some other, you know, fly in the ointment, so to speak, that's going to mess things up. That they have to overcome, because if they're all just standing there and they're looking at the gauntlet, then it's too easy. I mean, like it's still, it's too short. It's just like, well, who's going to do it? But because you know, as we know, the Avengers face the idea that, well, Thanos destroyed them, so now we have to,
right? What
are we going to do? And you know, if they had to go back in time, the problem with this one is they don't have Tony
exactly
to help them figure that out. So,
but they do have the stones. So, like, if let's say the stones are there, So, like who would do it? I mean, first of all, like obviously any of them would be willing to do it. I mean, they're all heroes. They're good people. They want to do it for the greater good, and but you have to be powerful enough, so even the Hulk had a hard time, wielding it.
Yeah,
and
he got a broken arm for a while. That was like really strange.
Exactly. So
or sprained shoulder. I don't know what he had.
Right.
It was really bad.
It was, and like you mentioned, Scarlet Witch would probably be the one because I mean she almost beat Thanos on her own. So she is probably powerful enough to snap her fingers wielding the stones. And I could see a scenario where Black Panther is the one, maybe developing some sort of Wakandan technology, like similar to the to the gauntlet that Tony made for himself to wield the stones. I'm sure Shuri in Wakanda could do it probably faster because as we know, Wakandan technology is way more advanced.
I think I like an idea, and this would add a level that would you could see a lot of interesting conflict where you almost have another Civil War thing going on where the gauntlet doesn't survive just the stones, and the different Avengers get the different stones. And you have to unite them so that they, because they like, no, I'm going to be the one to do it. No, and they have either you have 2 factions or 3 factions, and you divide the stones a certain way, and you are trying to see like how are they going to resolve this because they have to come to some sort of conclusion amongst themselves that we need to come together. But they want to be, no, it's not going to be you. It's going to be me. You have to give me this. That would be an interesting.
That would be very interesting
way to play it out.
Well, again, I would go back to Scarlet Witch because, again, she still has lost so much to this point, and we know, how WandaVision plays out. Like immediately, she would be the one that's dying to get her hands on the stones to bring Vision back if she could. And Vision did not get dusted, so you could imagine a world where maybe she wouldn't be able to bring him back, and then you would see sort of the same thing that we see at the end of WandaVision, where she becomes Scarlet Witch, and we don't know where her head's at, and we're gonna see where she's at in Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness, where it looks like she's gonna be. At least for some portion of the film, the villain. I think it kind of plays out the same way. She's probably going to try and bring back Pietro along with the half that got dusted. And I could see the conflict there where, obviously at an Endgame, they all agreed you're going to snap your fingers and you're only going to bring back everyone that got dusted and change nothing else because they did not want to, play that sort of game. And then we have an admission of the Hulk saying he did try to get Black Widow back, but he couldn't. So for a fact that Black Widow would try to get Vision and Pietro back along with everyone else. So I think Scarlet Witch at the end of any of these scenarios, it seems like she's always destined to be the Scarlet Witch as long as she loses Vision and Sokovia and Pietro. But I think the best case scenario, again, I think is if as we can see, Black Panther is just such a good hero, a good man, and
because there's no guarantee. They don't really know if Scarlet Witch would survive, so they could have that where he's like, no, I'll be the one to sacrifice. Yeah, and also you're going to try to do things maybe that isn't necessary. We need to keep this just the people who are dusted, and you have those different conflicts. But back to Scarlet Witch, I love the character. I love Elizabeth Olsen and how she does it. She's
great.
And I'm excited to see where they take it because obviously with the ending of and I know this isn't the secrets of Scarlet Witch, but with the ending of that series, they're setting you up for more. They're like, look what she's doing now and what's going to happen. So I'm excited to see what's next.
Absolutely. I guess we'll end with, like we mentioned in the beginning, what if is canon? So do you think, any of these what if characters or storylines are going to play any part in the cinematic universe?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of where they're going already. With Spider-Man and the multiverse and different things. So I just hope they've been masters at turning what could easily be chaos or badly done, um, basically so many different characters.
Right.
These multi-character, these multi-star movies with even if it's not a quote unquote Avengers movie, you have like 2/3 of the Avengers in the movie.
Right.
And it never feels like one of those. Well, here this will be Superman's theme, and he's going to come in and we'll play his music and he'll do his shtick, and then we'll move on to the next superhero and they'll do their thing. It's never feels that way in any of the Avengers movies, and when you have the ultimate in Endgame, you're not left going like they're just trying to fit everybody in. They have so many stars. It's long, so they took a long time, but I guess what I'm saying is I can see them doing it well, because right now I can only see it being done badly. I mean,
right.
Like right now, as I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking they could really mess this up. They
Sure.
could overdo it. They could get to, because it could be so sloppily done. And I'm interested to see how they do say, let's not, go over the deep end. Let's not get crazy. Let's just, the animated series was fun and that's canon, but those are all different contained universes that kind of came together for a little bit, but they all, I don't think we ever dealt with any actual our universe people. It was always some other, universe. They didn't, when, excuse me, the Watcher came and chose everybody for the Guardians. He didn't come to our universe and, the universe we know of and pull anybody out. It was all the other ones that we had been introduced to through the series. So it'll be interesting to see, if they did, how they would say, well, let's just go here. Let's just go there. Or if one of our known characters visits another universe and what they experience.
Yeah, I think they'll do, again, pure speculation, but I think they'll maybe do some quick nods, to the show. Like maybe, like I can see like in the Doctor Strange movie, maybe we get like a brief glimpse of Strange Supreme, in there. Not as a major character, but as like a little cameo.
Well, there's a theory that is Strange Supreme. In other words,
I have heard this theory. Yes, and Spider-Man.
And I kind of like it.
And Spider-Man, right? Yeah.
And the new Spider-Man, you have, Doctor Strange is kind of out of character for the rather, when you watch the whole trailer and you're like, wow, he's doing something that's not very Doctor Strange like. He's usually like, no, that's not a good idea. You just got to accept,
That's true.
And yet he's doing this, and he seems more like the reckless Supreme, than the Doctor Strange we know.
Yeah, no, that I have heard that theory, and that would be interesting if they went that route. So
so that'd be a big nod.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Then then this animated series plays a big role.
Right.
But
it'll be interesting to see, especially since it's an animated series, and they would, these kind of nods, we got nods to the different animated series in like Rogue One with Star Wars and stuff, where they pulled in different things from Rebels and stuff like that, and that was nice to see that it was all one big universe and they weren't pretending the other one never happened. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, all the different live action movies were all very well represented, and we could very much tell this was all one big happy universe, so to speak. But to bring the animated one in, since it's animated, it's different. So it's a different thing. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it. I think they're definitely going to do it, but how they do it.
Yeah, I think them mentioning that it is part of Phase 4 and it is canon, I think there will be some sort of tie-in.
The only way canon really matters is if there's crossover.
Right. Yeah.
Otherwise, who cares?
Yeah.
Canon. Yeah, it's canon for that universe.
Yeah.
So what?
So whether it's more like a Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. sort of thing where, it's, you don't really have to watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. to see the for the crossovers to carry any weight. But there are some cool connections if you do watch the show. Or if it's something where, like you mentioned, if it's like a Strange Supreme plays a major role in Spider-Man or something like that, then definitely the animated series would play an important part of this this phase 4. So yeah, like you said, it'll be interesting to see, and it's all exciting stuff. And
Right.
as we've witnessed so far with WandaVision, Falcon and Winter Soldier, Loki, and now What If, the series are going into some really cool parts of
And Scarlet Witch, you got 4 of them now.
Yeah, so it's exciting. So before we wrap up, were there any final thoughts you had, Mike, on What If?
I think we just kind of did it. I think it's neat. I'm interested to see if we have more of a series or just a bunch of standalone episodes in season 2. With was the Watcher breaking his oath wasn't a real What If. There's just one Watcher.
Right.
There's not one for every. So that was a big deal. So he did it or he didn't. And he did.
Yeah.
So now we have a different kind of Watcher, and it'll be interesting to see if the whole thrust of the series turns into more of a episode that builds on each other, more of a serial than just standalone.
Yeah, I think what I'll say is the events of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange will probably have an effect on What If season 2. And if, let's say, the Watcher appears in those films, or the events of those films would affect the Watcher in any way, I think we'll see that in season 2 of What If. Again, so there's more of that crossover between the cinematic universe and the Disney Plus streaming shows, which is obviously something that Marvel Studios is really investing heavily in.
Yeah, and they know how to do it better than anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. They're still number one, and they're writing that as long as they can, and I don't see it ending anytime soon.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see a live action Watcher as Jeffrey Wright, playing him.
Oh yeah, that would be cool.
He'll have to shave his beard, but
Yeah, we did see the Watcher in one of the films. I want to say, was it one of the Guardian films? Where it was it was one of the Stan Lee cameos. I'm forgetting which movie it was. I think it was one of the Guardians films, but
okay.
Listeners, forgive me if I'm wrong. But anyway, it was one of the Stan Lee cameos, and he was like on another planet, he was an astronaut stranded on some planet with the Watcher. Actually, there were multiple Watchers, if I remember correctly. It was multiple people with big heads, right? And yeah, the Watchers didn't. I don't think the Watcher even had a line, but it was Stan Lee asking if he could get a ride back to Earth, and the Watcher turns around. So we had a little quick nod to the Watcher in the films before, but yeah, I think if you have an actor of Jeffrey Wright's caliber and you're able to bring him into the live action MCU, I think that's probably in the cards. So yeah, that'd be cool to see. I'd love to see it. So that'll do it for this episode. But before we leave, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create secrets of movies and TV shows, including Gerard T, Buck and Julianne T, Daniel R, Mark A, and Gwen L. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of movies and TV shows and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. That's it from us. What did you think of Marvel's What If? Let us know by commenting on the show, posting at sqpn.com/secrets or the StarQuest Facebook page, or send us an email to secrets@sqpn.com. Until next time, Mike Denz, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Marvel's What If.
I really enjoyed it. It was fun. Thanks.
Absolutely. And once again, I'm Andrew Hermiz. Thank you for listening to the secrets of movies and TV shows on StarQuest.